Welcome back, my dear followers. This is a new episode of the History of the American Mafia, a podcast written by Fabio Fabiano and translated and read by Grace Carlisi. Please do enjoy today's new episode. This is part 2 of a 2-part series on Joe Bonanno. In 1957, Vito Genovese took control of his family and attempted to formally assume control of the commission. That same year, in Appalachia, a small town in the state of New York, the 100 most powerful mafia godfathers in the United States were invited to attend a meeting. This event will be considered one of the most famous of the American Cosa Nostra convention. The meeting was aimed at resolving the commission's problems and avoiding future clan wars. New York police discovered the meeting, and on their arrival the mafiosis fled through fields and woods. Some were blocked and arrested, others managed to escape, but the general outcome was that the meeting was a failure and didn't succeed to facilitate the dissolution of the latent conflicts. In 1963, Giuseppe Vallacchi, one of the members of the Genovese family, decided to cooperate with the police and provided them with very important information on the organization of the Italian mafia families. His revelations, among other consequences, led to the accusation and conviction of Vito Genovese. This arrest should have facilitated Bonanno's rise, at least so he believed. Between 1959 and 1962, he was considered a boss of all bosses, although his authority never reached that of his predecessor. In 1962, Bonanno, after Joseph Profaci had died of cancer, one of his most faithful friends and allies, together with his successor Joe Magliocco, decided to get rid of the two most powerful leaders, Gambino and Lucchese. Therefore, they organized a plot to kill them together with their lieutenants. One of Magliocco's henchmen, Joseph Colombo, betrayed them and warned both Gambino and Lucchese. Gambino urgently summoned the commission to interrogate the two protagonists. The commission demanded an explanation from both Magliocco and Bonanno, but the latter refused to appear and answer questions. At the time, Magliocco was elderly and very ill, which is why the other families were rather lenient, fining him with $50,000 and forcing him to retire from active criminal life. A month later, Magliocco died of natural causes. The members of the Italian-American cupola had hoped that clemency towards Magliocco would lead Bonanno to confess. In any case, given that many of them had known Bonanno since childhood, they were reluctant to accept Giancana's proposal to kill Bonanno without first hearing a statement from him. However, the commission continued to distrust Bonanno. Some years later, he committed yet another grave mistake. He placed his son at the head of the family without consulting his own clan and without their consent. An internal conflict broke out in the family, and the coterie split into two factions. One side remained faithful to Bonanno, his half-brother Frank Labruzzo and Bonanno's son Bill. The other faction was united under the leadership of Gaspare di Gregorio. The press called this conflict the Banana Split. The two factions didn't engage in any violence until a meeting in Brooklyn in 1966. Di Gregorio loyalists had planned to eliminate the opposition, but failed. In fact, a shooting occurred between the two factions, but the episode ended without any deaths. However, the conflict escalated and triggered a chain of violence and killing. Bonanno's opponents criticized him for spending his time away from New York at his second home in Tucson, Arizona. The commission, tired of this conflict, replaced Di Gregorio with Paolo Sciacca. But nothing changed as the conflict continued. In 1964, Bonanno and his legal representative were kidnapped by Bonanno's trusted man, Mike Zaffarino. Bonanno was kept in hiding for 19 months in New York, after which he agreed to retire and move to another country. He chose Haiti. In 1965, however, his son Salvatore suffered an assassination attempt, during which the boss's brother also risked being killed. Bonanno understood that behind this attempt was the one who had taken his place in running the business, Paul Shaka. Repercussions soon began for Shaka in what was known as Joe Bonanno's War. This new feud split the Bonanno family into two branches, one that supported Joe Bonanno and the other that supported Paul Shaka. Bonanno was still very powerful, more powerful than Shaka, and the other families understood this immediately. Before further measures could be taken, however, Bonanno suffered a heart attack and definitely withdrew from the scene, retiring from his role as godfather in 1968, putting an end to the war. Both factions came under Shaka's command. Subsequently, he was replaced by Joe Diamond's Evola, whose leadership was very short. After his death due to natural causes in 1973, he was replaced by Philip Rusty Rastelli. Joe Bonanno retired to Tucson, Arizona in 1968 with his son, where he also was arrested by the FBI for a number of minor crimes committed in the past. In 1983, he wrote his autobiography, A Man of Honor, in which he explains his lifestyle and his role when he was, so to speak, in business. He also denounced the publisher who, in his opinion, had portrayed him as a low-class gangster on the cover. In the biography, Bonanno accuses his rivals of having lost the so-called original purity of the criminal organization, welcoming non-Sicilian members into the mafia families who didn't understand the traditions and the codes of honor of the mafia. Unwritten laws that do not repel kidnappings, violence of all kinds, and even murders, but which would have recognized superior values such as family, solidarity between fellow countrymen, facade, religiosity. In this autobiographical writing, some important details and secrets about the mafia were relieved, and therefore an investigation was launched. In 1985, he was convicted on charges of obstruction of justice. In fact, he refused to testify in front of a jury regarding what he had published, and for not having responded to what he knew about the mafia and in particular about the existence of the commission. The penalty was a fine of $450, and he remained in prison for 14 months. Due to his poor health, he was released. The Bonanno family is still the only one to have kept its original name. Joe Bonanno died in exile in Tucson, Arizona on May 12, 2002, at the age of 97. He was the last of the old godfathers of the 1930s to die. His youngest son, Joseph Jr., died of a heart attack in 2008. His firstborn, Salvatore, died of food poisoning